The Table, the Ass and the Stick. Chapter 1. Once upon a time there was a tailor. The tailor lived in a small house. The house was in a village near the forest. The tailor had 3 sons. He also had a goat. The goat ate lots of rich green grass every day. So, one of the tailor's sons took the goat out every day to find her a good place to eat. One day the oldest son took the goat out. He took her to the churchyard. The churchyard was full of grass. The goat ate, then she played, then she ate some more. When it was time to go home, the tailor's son asked the goat, "Well, goat, did you have enough to eat?" The goat answered, "I am so full. I cannot pull another blade of grass." The boy and the goat went home. When the tailor saw his son, he asked him, "Did the goat have enough to eat?" The boy replied, "She is so full she no more can pull." But the tailor wanted to be sure. He went and asked the goat, "Did you have enough to eat?" The goat replied, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked everywhere." The tailor became very angry. He shouted at his son, "You are a liar. The goat is very hungry." He took a stick and beat his son. He beat him hard. He beat him many times. "Get out of my house!" he shouted. So, the oldest son ran away. Chapter 2. The next day the tailor woke up early. He said to his second son, "The poor goat is very hungry. Take his out. Find her a good place to eat. Don't bring her back until she is full." The second son took the goat out. He found a field. The field was full of rich green grass. The goat was very happy. She ate, then she played, then she ate some more. In the evening the second son asked the goat, "Well, goat, did you have enough to eat?" The goat answered, "I am so full. I cannot pull another blade of grass." The boy was happy when he heard the goat. The boy and the goat went home. When the tailor saw his son, he asked him, "Did the goat get enough to eat today?" The boy replied, "She is so full. She no more can pull." The tailor was happy, but he wanted to be sure. He went and asked the goat, "Did you have enough to eat?" The naughty goat replied, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked everywhere." The tailor became very angry. So, he said, "I have 2 bad sons." He took a stick and beat his second son too. He beat him hard. He beat him many times. He said, "You are a liar. Get out of my house." The second son ran away. The tailor was very sad. He thought, "Now I have only 1 son left." The next day the tailor woke up very early. He said to his youngest son, "The poor goat is very hungry. She hasn't eaten for 2 days. Take her out. Find her a good place to eat. Don't bring her back until she is full. The youngest son took the goat out. He found a meadow. It was full of long, rich, green grass. The goat was very happy. The boy was happy too. He thought, the goat will eat well today. The goat ate, then she played, then she ate some more. When it was time to go home, the tailor's son asked the goat, "Well, goat, did you have enough to eat?" The goat answered, "I am so full. I cannot pull another blade of grass." The boy was very happy when he heard the goat. The boy and the goat went home. When the tailor saw his son, he asked him, "Well, did the goat get enough to eat today?" The boy replied, "She is so full she no more can pull." The tailor thought to himself, "That's what the other two said." So, to be sure, he went and asked the goat, "Did you have enough to eat?" The very naughty goat replied, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked everywhere." The tailor became furious. "So," he said, "all of my sons are bad. It's better to have no sons at all." He took a stick and beat his youngest son. He beat him many times. He beat him hard and the stick broke. The third son ran away. The tailor became very sad indeed. He thought, "Now I have no sons." Chapter 3. The next day the tailor woke up and thought, "Now I am alone. I have no sons to help me. I must take care of the goat." So, he took the goat out. He found her a very big green meadow. He said to the goat, "You will eat a lot today. I'll go back to work now. I'll come to get you in the evening." The tailor went back to his house to work. The goat ate and played all day long. She was very happy. When the tailor came to collect her at sunset, he asked, "Well, goat, are you full?" She replied, "I am so full. I cannot pull another blade of grass." The tailor heard the goat's reply. He was very pleased. He said, "Today you ate, and you ate well. You were not with my useless sons." Then, he took the goat home. When they arrived, he looked at the goat and said, "Now, for once you are full." But the silly goat replied, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked everywhere." When the tailor heard this, he realized his mistake. His sons were good boys, but the goat was a bad animal. He was furious and said to the goat, "I will teach you a lesson you will never forget." He took his razor and shaved the goat's head completely. Then, he took a big whip and beat the goat. He beat her much harder than he had beaten his sons. The goat ran away. The tailor was very tired and very sad. He had no sons, and now he had no goat. He felt very lonely. Chapter 4. The oldest son went to a town far away. He got a job. He worked for a carpenter. He was a very good worker. The carpenter was very happy with his work. He learned the job and decided to go back home. Before he left, the carpenter gave him a gift. He gave him a table. It was a little table made of wood. The carpenter said to him, "It looks like an ordinary table, but it is a very special table. In fact, it is a magic table. When you say the words 'table,' 'be covered,' a clean tablecloth, plates, knives, forks, and lots of delicious food and wine appear on the table." The oldest son said, "This truly is a magic table and I am very happy to have it." He thanked the carpenter and began his long journey home. He wanted to see his father and brothers again. He was homesick. He wanted to show the table to his father. He thought, "My father will not be angry. I have something good for him." The journey took him many days. When he was hungry, he found a quiet place, put his table down and said, "Table, be covered." Then food appeared on the table and he ate well. One night the young man arrived at an inn. The inn was full of guests. They welcomed the young man and invited him to eat with them. The young man said, "Thank you, but I have lots of food to eat. Please, come and eat with me." The guests laughed. They thought, "The young man is joking. He has no food to give." But the young man put down his little wooden table in the middle of the room. He said, "Table, be covered." The table was immediately full of the most delicious food and fine wine. The guests were surprised. The young man said, "Eat from my table." The guests were very happy to eat the wonderful food. The landlord of the inn saw this and thought, "If I had a table like that, I would be rich." The landlord had an old table. It looked like the young man's table. But it was not a magic table. When the young man went to sleep, the landlord took the magic table and put his old table in its place. Now the tailor's son had an ordinary small old wooden table. Chapter 5. In the morning the oldest son continued his journey to his father's house. But he did not know that he had the wrong table. Finally he arrived home. His father was very happy to see him. He welcomed him. The young man rested, and then his father asked him, "Now, my dear son, what have you learned?" The young man replied, "I have learned to be a carpenter." "That is a good job," replied his father. "But tell me, what have you brought back with you from your travels?" The son showed the little table to his father. He said, "This is the best thing I've got, father." The tailor looked at the table and said, "Well, that is just an ordinary old table." The son answered, "It looks like an ordinary old wooden table, but it's a wonderful magic table. When I put it down and say 'Table, be covered,' immediately it is full of rich food and fine wine. I want to invite all our friends and neighbors to eat." So they invited all their friends and neighbors to their house for a feast. When everyone came, the carpenter put the table in the middle of all the friends and neighbors and said, "Table, be covered." Of course, nothing happened, because the table was not magic. The carpenter could not understand why. All the friends and neighbors laughed, but they were also disappointed. The carpenter felt ashamed. Then everybody left. The tailor went back to work. The young carpenter found a job and started working. Chapter 6. The second son went to a village far away. He got a job. He worked for a miller. He was a very hard worker. The miller was very happy with his work. The second son worked for some time, and then he decided to go back home. Before he left, the miller said to the young man, "You have been a good boy and I'll give you a gift. I'll give you an ass. He will draw no cart and carry no sack." The young man asked, "What good is he then?" The miller answered, "He spits out gold. Just put a cloth in front of him and say bricklebit. He will immediately spit gold pieces out of his mouth." The miller then put a cloth in front of the ass and said, "Bricklebit." The ass coughed and spat out 2 gold pieces. The young man said, "This truly is a magic ass and I'm very happy to have it." He thanked the miller and started his journey home. He wanted to see his father and brothers again. He was homesick. He had a magic ass to show his father. He thought, "My father will not be very angry. I have something good for him." The journey took him many days. When he needed money for food or a bed, he found a quiet place, put a cloth in front of the ass and said, "Bricklebit." The ass coughed and spat out gold. One night the young miller arrived at an inn. His older brother had stayed at that same inn, and he had lost his magic table there. The young miller didn't know this. The landlord met him at the door. He said, "I'll take the ass to tie it up." The young miller replied, "Don't trouble yourself. I will take him into the stable. I will tie him up. Then, I will know where he is." The landlord thought this was very strange. He thought only poor men looked after their own asses. Then the young miller took 2 gold pieces from his pocket and gave them to him. He said, "I want something good for my supper." The landlord was surprised. He brought some fine food for the young miller. When the young miller finished, he asked the landlord, "Do I owe you any more money?" The landlord was a greedy man. He said, "Yes, 2 more gold pieces." The young miller looked in his pocket. There was nothing there. He said, "Wait a moment, landlord. I will go and get some money." The landlord became curious. He followed the young miller into the stable. He watched secretly. The young miller put the cloth in front of the ass and said, "Bricklebit." The ass spat out gold pieces. The landlord was a very greedy man. He thought, "That is an easy way to get gold. I must have that ass." The young miller paid the landlord and went to bed. He was very tired. He went to sleep immediately. When he was asleep, the landlord went to the stable. He took the magic ass and put another ass in his place. Now the landlord had a magic table and a magic ass. Chapter 7. In the morning the young miller continued his journey to his father's house. He didn't know that he had wrong ass. Finally, he arrived home. His father was very happy to see him. He welcomed him. The young miller rested and then his father asked him, "Now, my dear son, what have you learned?" The young miller replied, "I have learned to be a miller." "That is a good job," replied his father. "But tell me, what have you brought back with you from your travels?" "Just an ass," his son replied. "We have plenty of asses here," said the father. "Yes," answered the son, "but this is no ordinary ass. When I say, 'Bricklebit,' the good animal spits out gold pieces. Let me call all our friends and neighbors. I will make them all rich." The tailor was happy when he heard this. He said, "I can stop working too." So they invited all their friends and neighbors to their house. When everyone came, the young miller put a cloth in front of the ass and said, "Bricklebit." But the ass didn't cough or spit out any gold pieces. The miller was ashamed and upset. The people were sad because they were still poor. Everybody went home. The tailor went back to work. The young miller found a job at a mill. However, he and his brother now knew that the landlord of the inn was a thief. Chapter 8. The youngest son went to a city far away. He got a job. He worked for a turner. He was a very good worker. Turning is a difficult job. It took him a long time to learn, so he stayed in the city for a long time. One day his oldest brother wrote him a letter. In that letter he explained how the landlord of the inn had tricked his brother and himself. The youngest son learnt everything about turning and decided to leave. Before he left, the turner gave him a gift. He gave him a sack. He told him, "There is a stick inside the sack." The young man said, "I can hang up the sack, so it will be useful to me." "But what good is the stick?" "I will tell you," answered the turner. "If you are in danger and someone wants to hurt you, say the words, 'Stick,' out of the sack. The stick will jump out and beat them. It will beat them so hard that they will not move for a week. It will not stop until you say, 'Stick,' into the sack." The young man thanked the turner. He was happy to have the stick in the sack. He left the turner and started his journey home. He wanted to see his father and his brothers again. He was homesick. The city was very far away from his home. The journey took him many weeks. On the way, some people attacked him. The young turner said, "Stick, out of the sack." The stick jumped out and beat them until they fell down. Chapter 9. One night the young turner arrived at an inn. His two brothers had stayed at that same inn and they had lost their gifts there. He sat down. Then he talked to the landlord. He told him about all the wonderful things he had seen on his travels. Then he said, "I hear you have a magic table. I hear you have a magic ass, too. But I'm not jealous. I have got something much better in my sack. The landlord listened very carefully. He thought, what is it? Maybe the sack is full of precious stones. It is for me. Good things come in threes. I must take the sack. It was late and the young man was very tired. He lay down with the sack under his head. The landlord waited. When he thought the young turner was asleep, he gently pulled the sack from under his head. He wanted to put another one in its place. But the young turner was not asleep. When the landlord had the sack in his hands, the young turner said, "Stick, out of the sack." The stick jumped out and started to beat the landlord. It beat him very hard. The landlord cried for mercy, but the stick beat him harder. It did not stop. Finally the landlord fell to the ground. The young man said, "If you do not give me the table and the ass at once, this game will begin all over again." The landlord cried, "Oh dear, no. I will gladly give them to you. Please, please stop it." Then the young man said, "Stick, into the sack." Chapter 10. In the morning the young turner continued his journey to his father's house. Finally, he arrived home. The tailor was very happy to see him. He welcomed him. The young man rested, and then his father said to him, "Now, my dear son, what have you learned?" The young turner replied, "I have learned to be a turner." "That is a good job," said his father. "But tell me, what have you brought back with you from your travels?" "A very valuable thing, dear father," answered the son, "a stick in a sack." "What?" cried the father. "A stick. But you can find a stick anywhere. You can cut one from any tree. But it is not an ordinary stick. When someone wants to hurt me, I say, 'Stick, out of the sack.' The stick jumps out and beats them. With this wonderful stick I got back my brother's magic table and magic ass from the wicked landlord. Now, call all our friends and neighbors. I want to show them the table and the ass. We can give them food and gold." The old tailor thought it was very strange, but he called his other two sons and all their friends and neighbors. First the young turner brought in the ass. He gave his brother the cloth. He said to him, "Now, speak to the ass." The miller put the cloth in front of the ass and said, "Bricklebit." The ass filled the cloth with gold pieces. Everybody filled their pockets. There was enough gold for everyone. Next, the young turner gave the table to his other brother. He said to him, "Now, my dear brother, speak to it." The carpenter put the table down. He said, "Table, be covered." The table was immediately full of rich food and fine wine. They had a great feast. They ate, drank, sang, and danced the whole night. It was a wonderful celebration. The tailor put all his tools away. He locked them in a cupboard. He lived with his sons in great comfort and they lived happily ever after. Chapter 11. But what happened to the goat? Well, she was ashamed of herself because the tailor had shaved her head. She ran into a fox's hole and hid. When the fox came back to her hole, she saw two big eyes looking at her. The fox was afraid and ran away. The fox met a bear. The bear asked her, "What is wrong, fox? You look terrible." The fox replied, I feel terrible. When I went to my hole, there was a monster inside. It had big evil eyes. I ran away. Don't worry, the bear said, I will help you chase it out. So they went together to the fox's hole. But when the bear saw the two big evil eyes, he was afraid too. He ran away. The bear met a bee. The bee asked him, "What is wrong, Mr. Bear? You look terrible." The bear replied, "I feel terrible. I went to the fox's hole with her. There was a monster inside. It had big evil eyes. We could not chase it out." The bee replied, "You think that I am a poor weak creature, but perhaps I can help you." The bee flew to the fox's hole. She flew inside. She sat on the goat's bald head. She stung the goat very hard. The goat screamed. Then she ran out into the world. She ran very fast. Till this day, no one knows where she went. The end.